Do you hear it? The echoes of the past, the whispers of forgotten truths, fragments of memories lost in the shadows. Welcome to BRAINROT, Echoes, where we bring you stories long buried, unravel mysteries cloaked by time, and guide you through the darkest corners of the mind and the universe. Each video is more than just content. It's an echo resonating deep within, urging you to question, to wonder, to explore. Backend index pointing right, hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and join us in listening to the echoes the world tried to silence. The Nemesis, humanity's final word. Prologue, the Third Fleet vanishes. So let me get this straight. Admiral Kexler said, his four eyes blinking in perfect asynchronous harmony while staring at the tactical display. You're telling me that this thing just obliterated our entire Third Fleet? Commander Velter, whose species had evolved from something that looked like a cross between a praying mantis and a filing cabinet, clicked his mandibles nervously. Yes, sir. Complete annihilation in approximately 14 seconds. 14 seconds. 14.3 to be precise. The Admiral's secondary arms gestured at the holographic wreckage floating in space. Our Third Fleet, 347 vessels, including the flagship Inevitable Conquest. Gone. In 14 seconds. 14.3. I heard you the first time. Now, you might be wondering how we got here. How the mighty Corvani Empire, conquerors of 17 star systems and possessors of the galaxy's most aggressively named spacecraft, found themselves staring at what used to be their most prestigious battle fleet, now reduced to glowing debris and regret. Well, it all started with what the humans called Project Overkill. Though in typical human fashion, they labeled it something completely boring in their official documents, something like Deep Space Reconnaissance Initiative or Advanced Stellar Cartography Program. Because apparently, when humans are about to build something that could crack a planet in half, they name it after office supplies. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's rewind to about 6 months ago, when Captain Blake Morrison was having what he would later describe as the worst goddamn Tuesday of his military career. And this was a man who once had to explain to his commanding officer why his entire squad had gotten food poisoning from alien berries during a diplomatic mission. Morrison, get your ass in here. The voice belonged to General Patricia Hawkins, a woman who had risen through the ranks of Earth Space Defense Corps by being approximately as subtle as a supernova and twice as destructive to her enemy's morale. Morrison had served under her for 3 years and had developed a healthy respect for her tactical genius and an even healthier respect, or fear, of her vocabulary. You bellowed, General? Morrison said, sliding into her office with the practiced ease of someone who'd been summoned to many uncomfortable conversations. Don't get smart with me, Captain. About something that's either going to make your career or get you court-martialed. Possibly both. Morrison, who was 34 and had already survived 2 alien first contact scenarios, a black hole navigation incident, and General Hawkins' legendary Christmas parties, settled into the chair across from her desk. I'm listening. Good, because what I'm about to tell you is so classified that the classification itself is classified. Hawkins pulled up a holographic display that showed what looked like a standard Earth-class destroyer. Meet the Nemesis. Nice-looking ship. Very destroyer. This is not a destroyer, Morrison. This is humanity's first attempt at reverse engineering alien technology we've acquired over the past decade. Acquired. Found lying around after their previous owners experienced sudden and terminal cases of thinking they could invade Earth. Morrison studied the display more carefully. The ship looked normal enough, standard human design philosophy, which could be summarized as, if it's not built like a brick house, it's not built right. But there were subtle differences. The hull gleamed with an almost organic sheen, and the weapon arrays seemed to follow mathematical patterns that made his eyes water if he looked at them too long. What exactly are we talking about here, General? We're talking about a ship that, according to our engineers, should be able to punch through a standard battlecruiser's shields like they're made of tissue paper. We're talking about faster-than-light capabilities that make our current jump drives look like paddle boats. We're talking about enough firepower to level a small moon. And you want me to... I want you to take it for a test drive. There was a long pause. Morrison had learned through painful experience that when Hawkins got that particular general look in her eyes, the one that suggested she was either about to do something brilliant or something that would result in a very awkward conversation with Earth's insurance company, it was best to think very carefully before responding. General, with all due respect, shouldn't a test flight be handled by someone with, actual experience with alien technology? Morrison, you've been in more first contact situations than anyone else in the Corps. You fought off 3 separate invasion attempts. You once successfully negotiated a peace treaty while dangling upside down from an alien torture device. That was more about survival than skill. Clothes doesn't count in horseshoes, hand grenades, or interstellar warfare. Hawkins leaned forward. Besides, the Nemesis isn't going to be flying solo. We're giving you the best crew we can assemble. How best are we talking? Lieutenant Commander Frank Kowalski as your XO, best tactical officer in the fleet. Chief Engineer Maria Santos. She's the one who figured out how half this alien navigation tech works in the first place. Navigation Tech Officer David Kim. He can plot a jump course through a black hole's event horizon and still arrive on time. And Dr. Elena Vasquez for Science Officer. She's got 3 PhDs in xenobiology, theoretical physics, and what she calls creative problem-solving. Morrison nodded slowly. Those are good names. People he'd trust with his life, which was apparently what he was about to do. What's a mission? Simple. Take the ship out for a shakedown cruise. Test the systems. See if it explodes. And if it does explode, try to aim it at something that deserves it. The impending confrontation. Now, this is where things get interesting, because while Morrison was having this conversation, approximately 47 light-years away, Admiral Kextra was having a very different kind of meeting. The humans have been quiet for too long, he said, addressing the assembled commanders of the Corvani Third Fleet. Intelligence suggests they're developing new technologies. With respect, Admiral, said Commander Alden, whose species looked like they'd been designed by a committee of particularly vindictive art students. Human technology is hardly a concern. They've only been spacefaring for 50 of their years? We've been conquering star systems since before their ancestors learned to make fire. That's exactly the kind of thinking that got the Zafrans defeated, Kextra replied. And the Crystalline Confederation. And the Void Hunters. The humans got lucky 3 times. Lightning in a bottle. Admiral Kextra's upper arms crossed while his lower arms gestured dismissively. Commander, I've studied every engagement the humans have been involved in. They don't fight like any species we've encountered. They don't follow established tactical doctrines. They seem to view warfare as a creative exercise. Meaning they do things that shouldn't work, which is exactly why they do work. They've turned improvisation into an art form. Kextra activated a tactical display showing Earth's solar system. Intelligence suggests they're testing something new, something potentially dangerous. To us, to everyone. Back on Earth, Morrison was getting his first look at the Nemesis, and he had to admit it was impressive. The ship was about the size of a standard destroyer, but it moved with a grace that seemed almost alive. The whole surface rippled with patterns of light that followed no earthly physics, and the engine's signatures showed power readings that shouldn't have been possible with current human technology. She's beautiful, said Lieutenant Commander Kowalski, who had the kind of appreciation for destructive machinery that made him extremely good at his job and extremely worried at parties. She's terrifying, corrected Chief Santos, running her hands over a control panel that seemed to respond to her touch before she'd even made contact. The power systems alone could probably provide a small city. The weapons, she trailed off, shaking her head. The weapons what? Morrison asked. The weapons are things that I'm pretty sure violate several laws of physics and at least 2 international treaties. Dr. Vasquez looked up from her sensor readings. The ship's computer systems are partially organic. They're actually learning from our interactions. It's like the ship is becoming more efficient every time we use it. How it's learning, I'm not entirely certain, but I think it's incorporating alien neural network patterns. The ship is essentially thinking. Morrison absorbed this information with the kind of calm that comes from years of dealing with situations that would send most people screaming for the nearest exit. So we're flying a sentient weapon of mass destruction that's powered by technology we don't fully understand. That's accurate, yes. And we're taking it on a test flight. Also accurate. Well, what could possibly go wrong? Now, in the interest of fairness, I should mention that Morrison wasn't being entirely sarcastic. He learned that when dealing with alien technology, the best approach was to expect the worst and be pleasantly surprised if you only lost half your crew instead of everyone. The Nemesis launched from Earth's primary shipyard on a Tuesday morning, local time. The departure was kept quiet. No fanfare, no media coverage, just a ship slipping away from Earth like a shadow, departing at dawn. Morrison settled into the captain's chair, which seemed to adjust itself to his body in ways that were both comfortable and slightly disturbing. "All stations report ready, Captain," Kowalski announced. "Take us out nice and easy," Morrison ordered. "Let's see what this thing can do." What it could do, as it turned out, was everything their best ships could do, but better. The Nemesis moved through space with an efficiency that made their previous vessels look like they were swimming through molasses. The engines hummed with a sound that wasn't quite mechanical, wasn't quite organic, but somehow managed to be both reassuring and unsettling. "Jump drive is ready, Captain," Kim reported. Coordinates laid in for the test range engagement. The jump was smoother than anything Morrison had ever experienced. Instead of the usual violent transition that left everyone's stomach somewhere in the vicinity of their ankles, the Nemesis seemed to simply step sideways through reality. "Jump complete," Kim announced, and Morrison could hear the awe in his voice. Transit time was "that can't be right." What can't be right? According to my calculations, we should have arrived 3 minutes ago. We arrived before we left. No, sir. We arrived exactly when we should have, but the jump time was negative. We somehow traveled faster than our own departure. Dr. Vasquez looked up from her console. The ship's temporal displacement systems are active. It's using some kind of space-time manipulation to enhance the jump drive efficiency. English document. The ship is borrowing time from the future to make jumps faster in the present. Morrison stared at her. That doesn't sound legal. I'm not sure it's physically possible, but here we are. Wonderful. We're flying a ship that cheats at physics. This was when things got interesting, because while the Nemesis was busy violating the fundamental laws of reality, Admiral Kextra's Third Fleet was beginning its approach to Earth's outer system. "Sensors detect the human test vessel," Commander Velter reported. "It appears to be conducting maneuvers in the asteroid belt." "Excellent. We'll observe their capabilities and then eliminate them before they can return to Earth with their data." "Sir, shouldn't we report this to High Command first? We're talking about a single human vessel, even if it's their most advanced ship. What possible threat could it pose to the Third Fleet?" This, as it turned out, was what humans call famous last words. The absurd battle begins. Meanwhile, aboard the Nemesis, Morrison was discovering that their test flight was about to become significantly more complicated. "Captain, I'm reading multiple contacts on long-range sensors," Kim announced. "Large formations approaching from galactic north." "How large?" 300-plus vessels, sir. Configuration matches Corvani Imperial Navy." Morrison felt that familiar tightening in his chest that came with the realization that a routine mission was about to become decidedly non-routine. "Red alert. All hands to battle stations." "Sir," Kowalski said, "should we withdraw? We're heavily outnumbered." Morrison looked around the bridge. His crew was professional, competent, and absolutely terrified, which was, in his experience, a healthy response to being outnumbered 300-1 by an alien armada. "Dr. Vasquez, what's the ship's combat status?" "All systems are operating at peak efficiency. The weapons are enthusiastic." "Enthusiastic?" "The ship seems excited about the prospect of combat. I'm reading neural activity patterns that suggest anticipation. The ship is looking forward to a fight, in a manner of speaking, yes." Morrison considered this. On one hand, they were facing overwhelming odds against a technologically advanced enemy. On the other hand, they were flying a ship that apparently wanted to fight, and had weapons that violated physics. Kowalski, what's our tactical situation? Honestly, sir, I have no idea. The targeting systems are showing me options I didn't know existed. The ship is suggesting attack patterns that, well, they don't make sense, but the computer insists they'll work. Such as something it calls a temporal loop bombardment and another one labeled dimensional ricochet. Morrison nodded slowly. Santos, can the ship handle whatever these weapons are going to do? Captain, this ship was built to handle things that would turn our best battleships into scrap metal. I think we're good. Kim, can you get us out of here if things go badly? Sir, with these engines, I can get us out of here before things go badly. Possibly before they even start going badly. Morrison looked at his crew. They were scared, but they were ready. They trusted him. And perhaps more importantly, they trusted each other. All right, people, let's see what this ship can do in a real fight. Admiral Kexthera was feeling confident as his fleet moved into attack formation. 347 ships, including some of the most advanced vessels in the Corvani Imperial Navy, against a single human test ship. The outcome was so predetermined that he was already composing his victory report. All ships assume attack formation Theta 7, he commanded. We'll demonstrate the futility of human resistance. Sir, Velter said, the human vessel is not withdrawing. It appears to be approaching us. Approaching? Yes, sir. Single ship moving directly towards our formation. Kexthera blinked his 4 eyes in sequence. They're attacking us? It would appear so, sir. One ship against our entire fleet. Yes, sir. Kexthera felt a familiar sensation, the same one he'd experienced when studying previous human engagements. It was the feeling of watching someone do something that was clearly impossible while being absolutely certain they were about to succeed. All ships open fire the moment that vessel comes within range. The Corvani catastrophe. Aboard the Nemesis, Morrison watched the enemy fleet spread out before them like a metal constellation. Well, that's a lot of ships. Yes, sir, Kowalski agreed. On the bright side, we won't have trouble finding targets. Weapons status? All systems ready, Captain. The ship is eager. Dr. Vasquez said, the ship's neural patterns are showing extreme excitement. I think it's been waiting for this. Morrison settled back in his command chair. All right, people, let's make history. What happened next would indeed make history, though probably not the kind that gets taught in schools. The Nemesis opened fire. Now, when most ships fire their weapons, what you get is a straightforward exchange of energy. You point your guns at the enemy, you pull the trigger, and hopefully something on their end explodes. Simple, elegant, effective. The Nemesis apparently felt this approach lacked creativity. The first weapon that fired was something the ship's computer called a phase-locked quantum disruption beam. What it actually did was reach across space-time, grab hold of the target ship's atomic structure, and convince it that existing was optional. The Corvani cruiser Predator's wrath simply ceased to be. Not destroyed, not exploded, just gone, as if it had never existed in the first place. What the hell was that? Morrison asked. I'm not sure, Kowalski replied, staring at his instruments in confusion. According to sensors, we didn't destroy that ship. We uninvented it. The second weapon was labeled Gravitational Cascade Amplifier. This one reached out, found the target ship's mass, and decided to multiply it by several thousand. The unfortunate cruiser Inevitable Victory suddenly found itself crushing itself under its own weight, compacting into a sphere approximately the size of basketball before its engines finally gave up, and it became a very small, very dense paperweight. Now that's just showing off, Morrison asserted. By the time the Nemesis had fired its third weapon, something called a temporal recursion cannon, that apparently shot the target ship backward in time until it crashed into its own past self, Admiral Kexthera was beginning to suspect that this engagement might not go according to plan. Evasive maneuvers, he shouted. All ships scatter formation. But the Nemesis was just getting started. The fourth weapon created a localized black hole that consumed 6 ships before deciding it was full and politely dissipating. The fifth weapon turned a destroyer inside out, which was every bit as disturbing as it sounds. The sixth weapon somehow convinced an entire squadron that they were actually on the enemy's side, and they should probably start shooting at their own fleet. This is impossible, Admiral Kexthera said, watching his tactical display update with increasingly creative forms of destruction. No single ship can do this, sir. Velter reported, his voice shaking. We've lost 47 ships in the first minute of engagement. 47, 49 now, sir. That last weapon appears to have convinced 2 of our cruisers that they were actually antimatter. Morrison, in the meantime, was having the strangest combat experience of his career. Santos, are we even controlling this thing? I don't think so, Captain. The ship seems to be selecting its own targets and weapons. We're just along for the ride. Kim, what's our status? Sir, we haven't taken a single hit. The ship is moving in patterns that, well, they shouldn't work, but every enemy shot is missing by exactly the margin it needs to miss by. The ship is dodging. The ship is dancing, sir. It's like it knows where every shot is going to be before it's fired. Dr. Vasquez looked up from her console, eyes wide. Captain, I'm reading massive neural activity from the ship's organic components. It's not just thinking, it's thinking in multiple dimensions. It's calculating probabilities across parallel timelines. English document. The ship is cheating. It's looking at every possible future, picking the one where we win, and then making sure that's the timeline we end up in. Morrison absorbed this information with the kind of calm that comes from having given up on the universe, making sense sometime around the third impossible weapon. So we literally cannot lose this fight. Not as long as the ship wants to win, no. And does the ship want to win? Captain, the ship is having the time of its life. I'm reading neural patterns that suggest it considers this the most fun it's ever had. By the 10th minute of combat, Admiral Kexthera's overwhelming force had been reduced to approximately half its original size, and the survivors were beginning to question their life choices. Sir, Admiral Alden reported, is requesting permission to withdraw. Denied. We outnumber them still. Admiral Stoll is also withdrawing. Also denied. Admiral Morcon has already withdrawn. What? He jumped his entire battle group out of the system approximately 3 minutes ago. His last transmission was, and I quote, "This is madness, and I refuse to be part of it." Kexthera watched another squadron of his ships get caught in something the human vessel was calling a probability storm, a weapon that apparently made it so chaotic that the targets would suffer catastrophic system failures. Maybe Morcon had the right idea. Meanwhile, the Nemesis was discovering new and exciting ways to violate the laws of physics, warfare, and good taste. Its 15th weapon had been something called a humor inversion beam that made the crew of an enemy destroyer laugh so hard they forgot to maintain their shields. The 16th had been a logic bomb that convinced a cruiser's computer systems that propulsion and life support were mutually exclusive concepts. Captain, Kowalski said, I'm not sure how to report this in the after-action report. Why not? Because half of these weapons don't exist, and the other half shouldn't be possible. Put down that the ship exceeded expectations. By how much? Morrison looked at the tactical display, where the Corvani fleet was in full retreat. All of them. The unexpected resolution. The final straw for Admiral Kexthera came when the Nemesis deployed what its computer cheerfully labeled as a causality violation torpedo. This weapon traveled backward through time, hit its target before it was fired, and then returned to the present to explode again, creating a temporal paradox that somehow managed to destroy the same ship twice. That's it, Kexthera announced. All remaining ships, emergency jump. Get us out of here. Sir, we're abandoning the mission. Velter said, we're abandoning the idea that this universe makes sense. Execute the jump now. The surviving ships of the Third Fleet, all 43 of them, jumped out of the system so fast they left scorch marks on space-time itself. Aboard the Nemesis, Morrison watched the last of the enemy ships disappear. Well, that was something. Captain, Dr. Vasquez reported, the ship's neural activity is returning to normal levels. I think it's satisfied. It's satisfied? The neural patterns suggest contentment, like a cat that's just caught a very large mouse. Morrison nodded slowly. Santos, damage report? No damage, Captain. In fact, the ship seems to be in better condition than when we started. I think the combat actually improved its systems somehow. Kowalski, casualty report. No casualties, sir. No injuries. Chief Petty Officer Williams reports that the artificial gravity actually got more comfortable during the fight. Kim, can you plot a course home? Already done, sir. The ship has provided me with 17 different routes, all of which will get us back to Earth before we finish this conversation. Morrison leaned back in his chair. All right, people, let's go home. The journey back to Earth was considerably less eventful than the outbound trip, mostly because the Nemesis had apparently decided that it had proven its point and no longer needed to show off. The ship traveled at a reasonable speed through normal space-time, without borrowing time from the future or convincing any fundamental constants that they were optional. When they arrived at Earth's orbital shipyard, Morrison found General Hawkins waiting for them with an expression that somehow managed to combine pride, terror, and the kind of exhaustion that comes from explaining impossible things to skeptical superiors. Morrison, she said, I need you to tell me exactly what happened out there. We encountered a Corvani fleet. We engaged them. We won. Morrison, General, when you say won, what exactly do you mean? Morrison considered this. We destroyed or disabled 304 enemy vessels in approximately 14 minutes, took no injuries, sustained no damage, and sent the survivors running home to tell their friends that humanity is not to be messed with. Morrison, yes, General, please tell me you're exaggerating. I'm really not, General. Hawkins was quiet for a long moment. The Corvani Empire has sent a formal request for a ceasefire. That was fast. They transmitted it while you were still in combat. Their exact words were, we formally request an immediate cessation of hostilities with the human species on the grounds that they have clearly gone insane, and we do not wish to find out what they will do next. Morrison smiled. I think that's the nicest thing anyone's ever said about us. Morrison, what the hell did we build? I think, General, we built exactly what we needed to build. And that, more or less, is how humanity accidentally created the most terrifying weapons platform in the galaxy by trying to build a simple test ship. The Nemesis was quietly retired from active service and put into what the official reports call strategic reserve, which was military talk for locked in a vault somewhere until we figure out what to do with it. Morrison was promoted to admiral and given command of Earth's entire defense fleet, on the theory that anyone who could survive a fight like that without going insane was exactly the kind of person they wanted in charge when the next crisis arrived. The Corvani Empire, meanwhile, decided that maybe conquest wasn't such a great idea after all, and began focusing on peaceful trade and cultural exchange. Admiral Kexthera was quietly reassigned to a desk job in the Imperial Cartography Department, where the worst thing that could happen to him was a paper cut. Dr. Vasquez spent the next several months writing reports that nobody believed and papers that nobody would publish until she finally gave up and became a science fiction writer. Her first novel, The Ship That Thought It Was God, became a bestseller in 17 star systems. Chief Santos was promoted to head of the Alien Technology Integration Department, where she spent her days trying to figure out how their other captured alien devices worked, and her nights having nightmares about sentient weapons platforms. And the Nemesis? Well, the Nemesis sits in its secure facility, humming quietly to itself. Its organic neural networks dreaming digital dreams of the day it convinced an entire alien fleet that maybe, U.S. team maybe, they should find a safer hobby than trying to conquer humanity. Because that's the thing about humans. We don't just fight. We improvise. We adapt. We build things that shouldn't work, and then we're surprised when they work better than they should. We're the species that looks at faster-than-light travel and says, you know what this needs? More cowbell. We're the ones who took alien technology designed for exploration and turned it into something that could delete enemy ships from reality. We're humanity, and we're just getting started. Epilogue. 6 months later, Admiral Morrison was in his office reviewing fleet deployment reports when his aide knocked on the door. Come in. Admiral, we've received a transmission from the Galactic Council. They're requesting a meeting to discuss, and I quote, the human problem. Morrison looked up from his reports. The human problem? Yes, sir. Apparently, since word of the Nemesis incident spread, 17 different species have petitioned for membership in the Terran Defense Alliance. They want us to protect them from other species who might want to invade them. And 11 other species have officially declared humanity a galactic threat and are demanding that we be quarantined to our own star system. Morrison leaned back in his chair. Lieutenant, what's your assessment of the situation? Sir, I think we've suddenly become the galaxy's biggest deterrent to interstellar warfare. Everyone's either too scared of us to fight each other, or they want us on their side. And this is a problem, how? Well, sir, the Galactic Council is concerned that we're disrupting the natural order of conquest and subjugation that's been the foundation of interstellar politics for the past 10,000 years. Morrison calmed down. Send a reply to the Galactic Council. What should it say, sir? Tell them we'll be happy to discuss the human problem at their convenience. But mention that we'll be bringing the Nemesis to the meeting. Sir, the Nemesis is in secure storage. I know, but they don't. The lieutenant grinned. Yes, sir. I'll send that message right away. Morrison returned to his reports, humming quietly to himself. Outside his window, Earth's orbital shipyards were busy building the next generation of human starships, vessels that would be faster, stronger, and considerably more creative than anything the galaxy had seen before. Because that's what humans do. We don't just build ships. We build possibilities. And the universe, for better or worse, is about to find out exactly what that means.